You can't make art using AI. And hopefully, in this video, I'll be able to explain why it is I believe that. Or I'll try to at least. So, I'm trying something new. Instead of just a time lapse and some music, I thought I would just mix it up a bit and do a voiceover. And what better topic to talk about over me drawing than AI, or more specifically AI art, and why I think that phrasing is inherently wrong. I would suggest to stick to the end, because I'm sure on my way to that reasoning of why you can't make art using AI, I'm sure I'm going to be stepping on some toes and upsetting a few people. If we're going to be talking about AI and how it can't make art, or you can't make art using AI, then the most logical place to begin would probably be, what is art? Art for me is creatively expressing emotions, feelings and ideas through a craft, be it drawing, painting or music. I would see the craft part as somewhat of a delivery system that delivers your creative ideas right to the viewer's head. In saying that, both sides of art will usually not be balanced. Take modern art for example.
Quick side note, I know we're technically not in the modern art era, but I'm going to be saying modern art a lot, and I'm just really referring to art produced in current times. That's all. Alright.
Is more heavily leaning towards creative expression of thoughts and ideas than the technical aspect of art, which personally I'm not a huge fan of. But in the same breath,
I understand how important it is for things such as art to change, evolve and grow. Look, I'm no art historian, but I'll hazard a guess.
There was probably an era that became too technical, and with that probably became too boring and stiff. But with each of these eras that hyper fixate on one side of art, art grows, it changes art in a positive way, it evolves art. So that's why I personally don't like modern art. I do like some of it is really good. Don't hate me for it. But I do understand how important it is for the growth of art as a whole. Now here's the controversial bit. Not all modern art is productive to art as some modern art. That title's terrible. Anyway, what does that extremely long title mean? I see modern art as a tree with a lot of different branches, but extremes do form, and the extreme branch that I want to talk about doesn't really have a name. But if I'm to put it into a context, I'm not talking about the modern art that brung us our Picassos and Banksys. No, I'm talking about modern art. The type of art that seemingly lacks any real delivery system. It's in a way just raw creative expression. Creating without rules is meditative, therapeutic, and is art within itself, which are all positives. So what's the negative? I think the negatives begin when the artist attaches some pretentious meaning that in a way gives the viewer a false promise that there's more that meets the eye here. But with no delivery system, this is usually not the case, and all it really does is confuse the viewer. So what does all that have to do with AI art? For me, modern art and even its extreme branches are far more important. I brought up modern art only because of what the extreme branches have left behind. They in a way left the door wide open to the question of what is art, and AI seemed to just walk right in. But I believe that AI does not belong with other art forms. Art at its core is creatively expressing emotions, and AI lacks emotions for now, so art can't be created. But there still remains a big question. Is the human using AI as a tool to create? I don't believe so. AI art is very similar to hiring a real blood and bones illustrator. I see AI as your hired illustrator. But an important part of this process is no matter how much directions you give or how many tweaks you command, the final piece is always going to be the illustrator's artwork, the AI's work. It's akin to a robot vacuum. No matter how much instructions you give, at the end of the day, you did not clean the floor. The robot vacuum cleaned the floor. When our workload becomes fully automated, the work produced is no longer ours. But I actually do believe though that in the process of AI art, there is art being created. But it's just not the visual produced by the AI. It's actually the prompt that's written by the human that I would consider art.
Sometimes I'll be doom scrolling on Instagram and I'll come across an AI image and I'll look into the caption and I'll see this big, massive, in-depth prompt that was used. And I honestly will see that there is understanding, that there's story, there's deep creativity happening within that prompt. Why do we not just cut out the middleman? Why do we need the AI image when for thousands of years, and hopefully for thousands of years to come, humans have been using their imagination? And I don't know about you, but for me, I think my imagination, I think the imagination of most people is tenfold what an AI image can do. That's why books are so popular, where we have to read this creatively written story, and in the background our imagination builds the world, and in doing that it's far beyond any image or video that AI is going to ever produce, in my opinion. So just write a book, or not even a book, just write out the details like you would a prompt, and my imagination will take over from there. I don't need an AI image. In saying this, it does open up another question, a smaller question but still very important. If the imagination is so good that all we need is creatively written text and our imagination will just do the rest, so why have a musician to write that song? Why not just put it into creatively written text? Why not just put that story into words and our imagination will do the rest? Same applies for like, why have a amazing painting with an amazing story when we could just put that into text and have our imagination do the same thing? And that is a good question, but again, it's a matter of perspective. When I see an illustration or I see a piece of music, it's a positive to the underlying work. For example, if I'm reading a book and at the end of the chapter there's a illustration, maybe describing a location or showing me the character that's being spoke about or being written about, I know on a conscious and even a subconscious level that the illustrator who produced this illustration has a deep understanding of the story and is weaving their emotions and their feelings about that story into that illustration. It's that understanding that an AI or a robot's just never going to be able to reproduce artificially. And don't get me wrong, I've definitely seen AI videos and pictures and images online, and I've definitely been tricked. I've been fooled into thinking that it was art, but that's all AI art is. It's just a trick. It's smoke and mirrors. Once that illusion is broken, for me again, all of that emotion that was felt is instantly taken away. That work isn't understood and doesn't have emotions and doesn't have feeling. If again, I am to get metaphorical, I would say human illustration and AI illustration in the same way I see whole food, real food, packed with nutrition, and emulsified, preservative-ridden food. Both are technically food, but in most cases, one adds and one adds nothing, or very, very little. And even in some cases takes away. Where a human illustrator understands the story, the emotions, and the ideas within, say, a book, the AI understands none of that. The only thing the AI understands is how quickly can I produce this? How quickly can it produce an image? How efficiently it can do so? And that to me just isn't art. But in saying all that, if you liked it, like the video and share it around, sure. But anyway, that does it for me. I do hope you enjoyed.